This feels like I made so many videos today. Well, actually, I made it. This is number 8, I think. Okay, let's finish off chapter 4. Talking about the aquatic ecosystems or biomes. They're not really biomes, so we don't really usually refer to them as biomes, but it's okay too. They're categorized by salinity, depth, and water flow. Salinity, whether they have salt or not, so fresh and marine, and then depth and whether the water flows like in a river. Okay, so the big two main ones are we have freshwater ecosystems and the marine or salt ecosystems, and we're going to talk about them. Some important aquatic organisms you should know about. Plankton. Plankton means you float. You're a very weak swimmer. You basically float. Our ocean is full of phytoplankton and zooplankton. Phytoplankton are your plant or autotrophic plankton, your algae, mostly bacteria, that kind of thing, cyanobacteria and algae. They are usually in the very upper top layer of the ocean. It's called the euphotic zone. And that's because they need light because they're producers, they're autotrophs. They're doing photosynthesis, so they need that light. Zooplankton are your animal plankton. These are usually herbivores. They eat the phytoplankton, or they're carnivores, eat other zooplankton. They can be single cell, they can be larger, they can be baby fish. There are a lot of them are larval stages of a lot of the marine critters that are out there. They can be permanently zooplankton, or they can be temporary zooplankton. They can go through metamorphosis and become an adult crab and that kind of thing. Nekton means you swim, so your dolphins, your whales, your fish, those are all nekton. And benthic organisms are organisms that live on the bottom. Shrimp, crabs, clams, worms, corals, sponges, those guys. A lot of them are decomposers. Your decomposers and detritivores live there. Some of them are referred to as sessile, meaning non-moving. The others are modal because they can move. And many of them are filter feeders and help remove a lot of the pollutants out of the ocean. Limiting factors. Number 1 limiting factor with regards to nutrients is phosphorus. Number 2 is nitrogen. Dissolved oxygen, how much oxygen is in the water. Warmer water holds less dissolved oxygen. So if water gets warm, it actually releases its oxygen and it can actually kill fish. Temperature, depth. Depth is an issue because of temperature and light. If it's unlit, it's going to be colder. If there's no light, it can't have photosynthesis. So, turbidity is basically how cloudy the water is or how far you can see in the water. This will determine how deep light can penetrate. If the water is crystal clear, that's low turbidity and light can penetrate to great depths. If it has high turbidity, it's very cloudy, there's lots of stuff in it, lots of plankton. A green lake has high turbidity. The light can't penetrate very far, so you only get photosynthesis in the couple top inches. Okay, so looking at freshwater, we have rivers, streams, lakes, ponds, inland wetlands. We're going to kind of go through all 3 of these. Streams and rivers are categorized based on flow. There is no certain point where it goes from being a stream to a river, but streams are usually smaller and rivers are usually faster or bigger, not necessarily faster. They usually have few plants and algae that live in them because the water moves too much. Plants don't like moving water. It's very uncomfortable to be pushed over all the time. So they have relatively low productivity. Because of this, a lot of the organisms in there rely on addition of organic matter from the land, the leaves dropping into the river from overhanging trees and that kind of thing to support their food web for them to eat. Movement means more dissolved oxygen. That's DO, not a big do. So the more movement you have, the more oxygen you have in your water, the more it can support your high level oxygen requiring fish like trout and salmon. If your river or stream is very, very slow moving, it's going to have much lower DO, dissolved oxygen, and so it's going to support organisms more like catfish that don't need a lot of oxygen. Okay, so again, low movement, low DO, and supports things like catfish. Catfish don't need a lot of oxygen. So there you go. There's a little, I'd call that a stream. No. Lakes and ponds. These are standing water. deep enough for no emergent vegetation, meaning that the middle's too deep for plants to grow up from the bottom. And we'll talk about that things. You need to know the zones of a lake. You have the littoral zone, which is the zone around the edge where it is shallow enough for emergent plants. Emergent plants are things just like your water plants, but they're rooted in the bottom, because if you think they are a seed, they have to be shallow enough that as a seed they germinate and then they can get enough light to grow. If it's too deep and they germinate, they can't get light to grow and they won't grow. Okay, so that's the edge, the nice little edge, not too deep kind of thing. The limnetic zone is the open water. Everything from the edge of the littoral zone, where plants can no longer grow, emergent plants can't grow, it's too deep for them, not enough sun, all the way to the other side kind of thing. That's most of it. Then you have the profundal zone. If your lake is deep enough that there is no light at the bottom, that's the profundal zone. Profundal zone usually also has low dissolved oxygen. Lots of like catfish and mucky fish down on the bottom. And then of course your benthic zone. Benthic is the bottom, and it doesn't matter whether you're in 2 inches of water or 200 feet of water. The bottom's the bottom. It's the benthic zone. Okay, so looking here again, you have the littoral zone all around here on the edge where the emergent, see, those are emergent plants. They can grow. Okay, then it drops off and it's now too deep. Okay, if a seed ends up here, it couldn't grow. So this is now the limnetic zone. And then this, the dark part where there's no light underneath the limnetic zone, would be your profundal. And then your benthic zone, again, is from the shallow inch of water all the way down to the deepest part of your lake. All the bottom is the benthic zone. Okay. Submerged or saturated with water for part of the year, that's the definition for a wetlands. And there's different types of wetlands. Wetlands have very high productivity, lots of growth, lots of photosynthesis, not a lot of respiration, lots and lots of growth of plants. They also provide a lot of ecosystem services. They actually help us with a lot of things. They hold a lot of water, which reduces our flooding and droughts. They filter a lot of pollution out of water that's coming out of our rivers and stuff. So they help clean it up before it hits the ocean. It's a recharge zone for groundwater. A lot of that water will percolate down into our aquifers. And it's also very important for migratory birds, and a breeding area for a lot of baby fish and our other clams and oysters and things that are important to us financially as food sources. Human impacts, unfortunately, in a lot of areas, especially here in Florida, we drain a lot of our wetlands. Our school was on a wetlands and we drained it. It's drained for agriculture, for development, to eliminate mosquitoes and various disease-causing organisms. We also use these areas a lot for hunting. If you go down to the Everglades, there's, if you get a permit and stuff, you can go in and hunt alligators and all. And then we have dried some of it out to grow crops, or use some of it to grow crops, rice, blueberries, cranberries. If you go down to south of Okeechobee, all that was wetlands, and it's all been dried out for sugarcane. Okay, so there's basically 4 types of wetlands. Your swamps, they have trees. They have emergent trees that are growing out of the water. So your cypress swamps. You have marshes, which are non-woody vegetation, cattails and sedges, grassy kind of things. Sedges is like a really tough grass in a way. It looks like it. It's not a grass, but it kind of looks like it. A bog is acidic. It's usually rain-fed from kind of marsh, similar to marsh. It's got usually a lot of mosses and some cypress trees around it. And then a fen is very much like a bog, but it's groundwater fed. Water's percolating up from the ground. Okay, so cypress swamp. And this is, I think this is a marsh, and then this is a fen. Usually a fen, you can't see a source of where the water's coming from. There's no river or something. So that, but sometimes it's hard to tell the difference. Okay, so moving on to marine habitats. Let's see if we can get this done and get this all wrapped up. We have coastal marshes and swamps. We have estuaries, barrier islands, coral reefs, open oceans, and we're going to go through most of these. The majority of life in the ocean is around the continental edge in the very shallow water. There's nutrient runoff from land, which helps to some extent, and it's shallow. It's lots of light. So again, that's very important. The euphotic zone, that's okay, are where you find the autotrophs, and that is the that's not the right word. Okay, wait a minute. This should be euphotic. There, that's the right word. This is where the top part of the photic zone in the ocean, this is where you're going to find the autotrophs, the photosynthetic critters, and that's where most life occurs in the ocean. Estuaries and salt marshes, the Everglades is an estuary. They are usually along temperate coastlines. You don't find these down in the tropics and stuff. They do not have any kind of trees emerging from the water, so no woody emergent plants, just grasses and stuff. Freshwater usually empties into a saltwater situation like in the Everglades, so it has a variety of salinities from very little salt in the water to quite salty. This is referred to as brackish. If it's salty but less than the ocean is, it's brackish water. They are very high biodiversity areas. They are an ecotone. They are a combination of a freshwater and saltwater species together, and a lot of organisms are adapted to this kind of zone or can survive in this zone. So huge biodiversity area, lots of different species. They help stabilize shorelines. They protect our inner shore areas. If a storm comes in there, they kind of buffer it, protects against flooding and that kind of thing. They're nutrient rich, lots of nutrients coming out of the river, so high productivity. They also help to filter a lot of pollution and stuff out of the water. They're a nursery area for, again, invertebrates and nekton fish and clams and shrimp and that kind of thing. And turbidity usually is a little high, naturally can be just from sediments and stuff rushing down the river, but anthropogenically, which is human caused, we do a lot of disturbances and stuff, so we can make the water quite turbid or cloudy. They are also an area with high pollution possibilities because, again, a lot of rivers are dumping into them, and those rivers can carry fertilizers from farms. They can carry fecal contaminants from upriver because there's flooding and, you know, the sewer system overflowed or whatever, and oil and just the grime and stuff from cities, because a lot of our major cities are on rivers because it's an easy transportation course for method for our goods. Okay. Benefits of estuaries: they remove pollutants, protect the shoreline, they're a nursery area for organisms. Human impact: lots of recreation, hunting, fishing, boating, commercial fishing in the area, and aquaculture. We actually go in and use this area for aquaculture, and it can actually cause problems. Mangrove swamps, tropical, subtropical coastlines, mangroves, black, white, and red mangroves. They don't need fresh water. They are all salt. Unlike estuaries, they have trees, the mangroves. Mangroves are great at helping to prevent the coastline from erosion and storm surge, and are very important. And here in Florida are illegal to remove. And again, the mangroves are a great nursery area and breeding area, nesting area for a lot of organisms. Okay, again, mangrove swamps. Mangrove leaves, they sink into the bottom. They provide a great food source for the detritivores and the little organisms that are living there in the nursery area. Unfortunately, humans, we've cut down a lot of the mangroves. Now here in Florida, that's illegal. You can't do that. We've converted a lot of the area to aquaculture, so we're growing clams and fish and stuff in that region. And we've decimated a lot of it from human populations. Okay, I have to, even though I'm just a few slides short, I'm going to have to cut it off here because I'm about to run out of time.